In today's episode of Today in World War II, March 15th, the Finnish Parliament ratifies the Winter War Peace Treaty. Two German battle cruisers attack an Allied convoy successfully. Hitler predicts a victory over the Soviet Union by the end of the year. The Japanese High Command officially declares that they're moving from offense to defense. And finally, the Soviets reach the pre-war boundaries in Belarus. Let's get started. Okay, so on March 15th, 1940, we're going to put the rubber stamp on the Winter War today. The Finnish Parliament ratified the Moscow Peace Treaty, 145 votes to three against, and the Winter War officially ended. I'm sure that a lot of you who've been following this have been as fascinated as I have been about this. I'm sure that a lot of you did not know all the details that I've not uncovered, but shared with you in this video series. And it's a kind of a relatively unknown war, especially for people in the West. But I love it. I continue to love reading about it, learning about it. And there's a whole, I mean, this is just giving you the surface stuff. There's just, if you go deeper into this, it's fascinating. And I have mentioned this before many times that I am absolutely in awe and admire the Finnish people and how they resisted and how they were able to keep their freedom. One statistic that is very, very important to understand. If you look at the territories, the countries that were occupied by the Soviet Union, either, well, let's say from 1940 to the end of the war in 45, okay? Baltics, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. You look at Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, uh, Yugoslavia wasn't occupied, but it was a communist regime under Tito. Hungary, for example, um, all these countries that the Soviets had occupied, with the exception of Austria, they occupied Austria, but they pulled out. That was part of the Yalta Agreement, so they pulled back. But besides that, they all were under Soviet domination in the Warsaw Pact, and they were under an oppressive totalitarian regime for another 40 years. Okay, 40, 45 years. The only one that did not have that fate, that was able to keep a large degree, they were independent. Their foreign policy had to be very neutral, but the only one that was able to keep their freedom was Finland. And they did it because they fought like tigers, maniacs. And the Soviets respected that, and they felt like it both times it wasn't worth the effort to continue. So they said, okay, good, fine, whatever, let's stop. They didn't do that with anybody else. So think about that, about when you think about Finland. Molodcy. That was Russian, sorry, Hyvat Suami is what I would say. All right, on March 15th, 1941, German battle cruisers Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, boy, they were causing loads of trouble in 40 and 41 in the Atlantic against merchant convoys. They attacked an Allied convoy about 950 miles east of Nova Scotia, Canada. They sank three tankers. And listen, in this war, tankers were the creme de la creme. That was the ultimate prize for U-boats and German surface raiders. And they also captured two tankers. So they got the ships and they got the fuel inside and they got them back to I'm assuming it would be France. So those battle cruisers, I tell you, if you were a convoy in this period of time in the Battle of the Atlantic, you didn't have strong escort presence, then it was bad news, very bad news. So these uh, these battleships had a charmed life, battle cruisers for 39, 40, 41, 42, started to get dicey for them after that. So foreshadowing, right? And on March 15th, 1942, Hitler predicted a victory over the Soviet Union by the end of the summer. in 1942. Uh, can you say delusional? I mean, pretty ballsy of the guy to predict that, considering that he just had his butt handed to him in front of Moscow and had been driven back about 150 miles from Moscow. Moscow was no longer in danger, and the Soviets were growing in strength. So interesting that he would make that prediction. Just goes to show you again, he was a corporal in World War One, and he was now the commander in chief, a corporal. Gives you a little perspective of who this guy was and how insane it was that this guy was in charge of their war and their entire government. So fascism is not what you want. On March 15th, 1943, the Japanese Imperial General Headquarters in Tokyo issued a joint Army-Navy Central Agreement about how they were going to operate in the Southeast Asia operations. In other words, Southwest Pacific for us, New Guinea, the Solomons, and so on and so forth. And this was they officially admitted that their dreams of an offense were over. The offensives were done. They had reached the limit. That we had stopped them in their tracks at Midway. We had stopped them in their tracks at Coral Sea, Midway, and the naval battles and all the naval battles that happened off of Guadalcanal. The Marines taking Guadalcanal and Tulagi and Gavutu, and the Cactus Air Force, the Naval Air Power, the Army had a squadron there. All of those elements had stopped them and beat them, defeated them, to where even the Japanese, as arrogant as they were and in denial as they were, almost to the same extent as Hitler was, right? I just talked about that. They came out and said, okay, we cannot invade anything else. We cannot conquer anything else. All we have to do is hang on. And so this was confirmation of that from the Japanese High Command. And finally, on March 15th, 1944, General Zhukov's First Ukrainian Front reached the Bug River. And by the way, that was the boundary of Operation Barbarossa uh, when the Nazis attacked the Soviet Union on June 22nd, 1941. So here we are, less than 3 years, and the Soviets had traded land for time. They brought up their defenses, their reinforcements from Siberia, their crack Siberian divisions, and threw them into the battle in front of Moscow, drove them back, and then we have the Southern Offensive, Stalingrad, the Caucasus, then we have Kursk. Finally, they were got rid of the Nazis from their home territories, and they reached the pre-invasion um, battle lines or borders. So now it was the next phase: Poland, the Balkans, and then Germany proper. And we're gonna watch that as it develops. Thank you very much for watching this video. I appreciate it, and I can't wait to show you one tomorrow.